Pacific Railroad on the south side of the neighborhood. We're blocked in by the light rail on the north side of the neighborhood, and we're blocked in by a trailer park on the east side of our neighborhood. We have limited ways to get into and out of our neighborhood. With the higher density designation, we're going to naturally have more traffic just on Spence or one way to get in and out. So all we're asking is for the DRC to make a slight amendment to the plan and make that whole block the gold medium to high density designation. That would go a long way in putting our minds at ease and let us have some breathing room. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
God, you had 5 seconds left. That was excellent.
Tell me the streets
Commissioner
again.
Tinsley.
The streets, the block is between Cedar Street and Terrace.
Want me to point it out on the map for you?
That'd be great.
It's right here, there's
See
a
there,
a
it's
diagonal split.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Next is Jan Bush.
Good evening, I am Jan Bush, and I live at 6411 South River Drive, where I live for 15 years. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all tonight. I'm an environmental planner. My area of practice is in land and water conservation and in energy development, utilities, and in water resources. And my comments this evening are pursuant to a letter that I wrote on August 26th that expressed my surprise and my disappointment that the general plan does not directly address climate change. And it is arguably the overriding sustainability issue of our time, and we do want to be leaders. I believe other Arizona cities, Arizona likes that come to mind, have updated their general plans with strategies that mitigate pollutants and adapt issues associated with the state's changing climate. Our climate is demonstrably hotter and drier than it was 10 years ago, the last time the city updated its plan. Moreover, last month, the University of Arizona panel confirmed that Arizona's climate trend of heat and drought and flood is predicted to continue. All this in response to the changing and increasing greenhouse gases. Warming climate inevitably creates impediments to Tempe's ability to implement this plan. Stormwater would be an example of that. Extreme precipitation can cause, overwhelm the city's effort to meet its obligations under its stormwater permit, under its water quality permit with the state, or to manage flooding in the Salt River floodplain. There are feasible solutions, some of them low cost, to address an exponential increase in stormwater. That's not going to come about if we focus on business as usual, which is what the conservation chapter does. Now, it seems the general plan will be approved, and it will not directly address climate change. My concern is that the city hasn't taken the opportunity to address what can become an unhooking of the city from its goals. I suppose that city leadership might think that the effort would end badly with rank and divisiveness. I think a conversation would allow diverse interests to learn about our situation, to learn directly about how local climate can change, to put together a shared framework if it works. It is entirely possible, I believe, that civic discussion can create a common policy alignment for the future, strengthen our collective capacity to adapt to the future, whatever that future is. Certainly climate change is not the only major uncertainty we face. Federal funding would be an example of another one, or our regional economic recovery, a third.
Thank you.
I want to finish.
Thank you.
My comment, if I put it in a sentence, is that Tempe should institute a formal planning process. Scenario planning comes to mind, to bring climate change out of the closet, to allow the institutions and residents and business owners who live here to address the potential for the future.
Thank you. Next is Jean. No last name, just Jean, 85282.
I would just like to ask if this has anything to do with Agenda 21?
I'm
Can
sorry,
I answer that?
I don't know, I'm not sure what your question is.
Does all this 2040 have something to do with Agenda 21?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Yeah, the UN Agenda 21.
I don't know.
Not that I know
And if Ron says no,
It's definitely no.
Well, then why do they always use sustainability and all those kind of words?
I'm not sure what your statement or question is. Would you like to make a statement in front of the commission?
No, I just was asking if this had anything to do with Agenda 21.
And no, it doesn't.
What's your heart going hope to die?
Okay, does staff anything to add on this discussion here?
What staff would remind the commission is that planning, comprehensive planning within the city of Tempe has been going on since about 1978. It's had a number of years and a number of general plans that we continue to use to help direct our growth and our planning. And that the state enabling legislation is what we use, Arizona State, and that's what becomes our guidelines for the development of this general plan.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Next is A.J. LaFaro.
Good evening, my name's E.J. LaFaro and I live at 1131 East Stevens Drive here in South Tempe. I've lived there since 1986. Mr. Chairman, members of this commission, I'm here this evening without a prepared statement or formal PowerPoint slide. I do want to mention to you some concerns that I have. I've lived here since 1986, and I know some of you have probably lived here longer than I have. And I was encouraged by some of the commission members' statements earlier today about the fact that, or this evening, about the fact that the city of Tempe has very little land use left. I'm very concerned about the general plan 2040, and I've seen some figures that Ms. Ryan has presented to the tune of, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Ryan, you want to increase the population in Tempe by what? Some 50,000 people?
That's a projection.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, thank you. So some 50,000 people. Recent population statistic, 2012, says we have around 160,000 here in Tempe. We're 40 square miles. If you do an average, you get 4,000 per square mile. That's on average. We know that not to be the case. So she wants to take us, or she's proposing, for the general plan, 2040, is proposing another 50,000 people. So you're talking about 30% more, or maybe another 1,000 or 1,250 per square mile. Ladies and gentlemen, what happened to community? What happened to neighborhood? What happened to the city that we moved here originally and grew up in or lived in early on? I'm looking at some of these high-density apartment dwellings, like the ones that Mark Taylor develops, the one that's down on Elliott at where Fiddlesticks used to be. And you're talking about a huge, if I'm not mistaken, you may have approved it, 1,500 units within that property? I mean,
No.
How many units are?
380. Is that right, Ryan?
280.
280, okay.
Okay, so you're doing 280, and then, okay, so you've got a concentration there and all of Mark Taylor's units are high density, in my opinion. But with what I saw here this evening about what they're wanting to do to go to the higher densities, this city can't afford this type of density. You look at the traffic on our surface streets today, and we're not being able to handle it. You're looking at all of the crime down in the downtown Tempe area, and I've had a meeting with Chief Griff, and he's having to redeploy resources down there. And what happens to 85284 and 85283 and 85282? Well, 3 and 4, with regards to having to redeploy those resources, and we're left defenseless down in 84 and 83 to the thieves with regards to home invasion, burglaries, etc. I suggest that they scrap General Plan 2040. We do not recommend it. It sounds like some of these members on this commission are in agreement that we do not need the types of density of 50,000 new residents and 75 to 80,000 new jobs, Ms. Ryan? 75,000 to 80 new jobs? 75,000. It's not. The General Plan 2040 is not feasible, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, R.J. Hunt.
Good evening. I'm R.J. Hunt. I live at 1217 East Manhattan Drive since 1976. I've practiced architecture in Arizona for 41 years. 37 of those years here in Tempe. For 22 of those years, as you, I have served on boards and commissions. And I strongly urge you to deny approval of Plan 2040. In my humble professional opinion, it is utterly lacking in community spirit. And I'm sorry to hear that apparently you folks do not know or are not willing to acknowledge knowledge of Agenda 21 from the United Nations. That being said, you probably don't acknowledge the city of Tempe's signing an agreement of the ICLID group, which is part of Agenda 21. If you would do some research, if you haven't already, you will find that everything in this plan is denying our liberties. It is slowly chipping away at our individual freedoms as citizens of this country. It is the worst possible thing that can happen because ultimately it undermines the Constitution of the United States, undermines our freedom, our very way of life. Certainly Tempe can do better. In the years that I served on boards and commissions, I was frankly disappointed, I guess probably a moderate term. When I served on boards and commissions and public hearings, I took votes. Even though our boards may have been unanimously opposed to a development proposal, we always made a motion in the affirmative and then voted against it, rather than say, no, we don't approve this. That gives a very negative impact, and in fact, I'm afraid that that is the attitude that we have going on in our local government today. I'm disappointed about it, but I strongly urge you, you people are going to be hearing this again, and it's going to be too late by the time it goes to the voters. If you people don't know what's going on, how do you expect the man and woman on the street in those homes to know? I live in an area that in the last meeting for input was designated as a revitalization zone. I asked Ms. Ryan at one of the meetings, what did that mean? And I was appalled at the answer. And I am very, very concerned about where this city is going after 37 years living here, raising my family. I'll stop.
Thank you very much.
Any questions, I'll try to answer, but I'm not. Thank you.
Thanks. Tracy, Ireland.
Good evening. Thank you for having this hearing. I'm coming to speak on the 2040 plan. Having been someone who lived in LA, lived in city life, and watched a lot of this happen, and also been in landlocked areas, I was so happy to move back here because the state of Arizona is known for its sunsets, its open lands, its community, and being able to drive around. But what I'm seeing is the encroachment of what they're doing in big cities coming into my city that I'm here now in Tempe. And tandem parking is the last thing I will even want to hear about. I've experienced that personally, and I wasn't aware of the project beforehand to speak on it. It is just not a good thing if you actually live in it in a long period of time. What I see with this project is just like what AJ and the other gentleman has been talking about, is this high density. And I'm also noticing with your 20-minute walk, it's like you're getting rid of cars. You're telling us we can't have any cars, we don't have that independence. You're making us dependent on public transit. And I have used public transit. I'd rather have my car. No offense, some people like public, I'd rather have my car. So seeing this coming into the city that I live in, having experienced it for many years in LA, I just am hoping that you will reconsider and put in some areas where we can drive. And also the other thing is, I don't know where all the money is going to come from on this plan. I have yet to hear that. I just keep being told it's just a general plan. I'd like to know the money. I'd like to know what the figures were that you crunched on. And having said that, thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you very much. Don Hawker. Dan again.
My family moved here in about 1960, so a long history of Tempe. Just watching this meeting, I'm pleased to see your thoughtfulness in listening to the inputs that have been given. The problem I have in general with the plan is it seems to be that the concept is oriented around preconceived notions, these density areas. It also seems to be based on preconceived notions of directing the type of vehicular activity, leading, people that are talking about Agenda 21 and so forth, that it's kind of natural because these are kinds of things that have been done in these higher centralized planning things. And we see what appears to be an approach here where they're trying to direct the people out of their cars and onto bicycles and walking and so on. I used to ride a bike 10 miles to work in California, and I lived there for about 18 years, but it was a more rural area. And the weather, of course, was better, and I was younger and so forth. And so I think it's dangerous to be trying to do that, even if you like these things for recreational purposes. That, you know, they even say in the plan that they're trying to get people to drive their bikes to work and so on. I think that given Arizona's weather and the diversity of ages and so forth, is very poor planning. It seems to be their ideal of what they want happening. The other failure is the assumption that the vast majority of people are going to be living and working in Tempe a few miles from work. This is another thing that we see in these big plans. And I don't think that that's a realistic viewpoint. If you have a free market and people can live anywhere in the valley and they may have to drive 10, 20 miles to work, and they're willing to do that, you have to account for that. You can't make an assumption that everybody's going to be living a few miles from their work. that's kind of a huge assumption on their part. I'd like to make a comment on the previous comment, if I may, that not everybody believes in man-made global warming, and spending money chasing proven hoaxes and false science. Financial and bureaucratic boondoggles is not what the general plan should be about. So I'd just like to say that I think it's too specific. We need to be more general and allow the free market to determine what things happen here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our last card, and I apologize, it's, first name looks like B, and M-E-L-A-E, 5 letters.
My name is Linda, and I'd just like to say I've been in Tempe since 78. And all the speakers who previously spoke about the density, we're all concerned about the density, and the fact that at my age, I'm not going to pedal myself all around Tempe on a bicycle path in the heat. So that's a concern. Very definitely, I had prepared some statements regarding the density, and most of the people that spoke ahead of me addressed it very well, especially when you consider increasing the density in Tempe is definitely a very strange thing when you're coupling that with narrowing of the roads that have already been done and those that are planned. So, but I think I would like to address the thing with global warming. I don't buy into it, and I'm sure that a lot of people who don't buy into the global warming, man-made carbon emissions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I would just like to say that in the year 2012, the ice caps were diminished, and in 2013, they have increased by 60%. So I would just like to know how this global warming by man, by their having these terrible automobiles, how you can account for this global warming when the ice caps have increased by 60%. And again, my other concern about this high density is the imposition on our infrastructure of water and sewer and all of the things that that are impacted when you deliberately increase the population of an old type town into a metropolis of high density, high rise type of structures. So this I think most of us that live here and have lived here for a long time would prefer the neighborhood, the single dwelling homes, the backyards where you can grow your tomatoes or your vegetables, and rather than this high density for people that really are here and want to rent, or no families, they just want to have their work cut out for them right next door to where they live. That's kind of impractical. I really do believe that the freedom of choice for us is that if I want to live on one side of the valley and work on the other, that's my prerogative. And that the capitalistic plan for determining how we should live is pretty much the way it should be, not the city planners deciding where we're going to live and how we're going to live. And I want to thank you for having us today. And that's it. I've got 4 seconds left.
You did great. Last speaker is Andrew Costanzo.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Costanzo. I'd like to say I noticed in this the presentation that transportation was addressed through walking, cycling, bus mass transportation, but where was my freedom in being allowed to drive my personal vehicle when I wanted, where I wanted, the distance I wanted? I think this is a great infringement on our personal freedom. It almost seems as though it's being designed that we need to use the mode of transportation that government has determined for us. Anecdotally, I want to tell you about my experience with mass transit. I don't use it, but I watch it. I see these buses that are supposed to save all of this energy, all of this carbon footprint. And so many of them, I see they're empty, save for the driver. And there's dozens of them driving around like this. How is this some sort of benefit to the taxpayer, even to the environment, if that is even a concern? I had a retail business in Tempe for 19 years. Quite successful. It still is successful, but it no longer has a brick and mortar face. And from the viewpoint of my front window, I would see, I watched a bus stop, and countless buses, almost every 10, 15 minutes. Blue buses, white buses, green buses. And one thing that I noticed about the people who are on the buses, they're a lot different than the people who get out of their cars. Never had I seen someone pull into the parking lot where our store was, in the strip plaza, get out of their vehicle, walk behind the garbage dumpster, and urinate. But this was an everyday occurrence from people who were riding on the buses. I noticed that the city of Tempe has to contract out to have each bus station cleaned up. Why is it that we want to encourage in our city, in our community, such filthy people? It is a detriment to our community to have this incredible public transportation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see no more cards. Anyone else wish to speak? Then I will close the public portion of the meeting. I want to thank you very much for coming out and kind of speaking your piece and telling us what to think about and things like that. It's very helpful. We've got a lot of responsibility here, and we'll certainly take all your comments into consideration. Comments from the commission? No? Commissioner Ron?
I feel compelled to make a comment because I think the General Plan 2040 is filled with a lot of adjectives and words that are unrealistic, but I don't see that the general plan is anything more than a guideline, and it's not something that reality is going to follow if it is against what reality dictates. And so my comment is, well, there's a lot of things in there that are unrealistic. It is not a law that this is going to have to happen. It is a guideline.
You have heard of it.
Okay. Anything else from staff? Thank you all for coming. The meeting is adjourned.